Me at Matthew 12 and 50 one more time. Take it from the top.
Matthew chapter 12, verse 50. For whosoever shall do the will of my Father, which is in heaven, the same is my brother and sister and mother.
So here, again, Christ is clearly delineating or the term saying who his brother, sister, and mother is. So he's telling you who his relations are. And his actual physical family was there in the crowd because a few scriptures up, they were saying that here, your mother and your brother are here desiring to speak with you. And he said, behold, these are, describing the disciples. He's saying those who do the will of my Father, those are my brother, mother, and sister. So in pairing that with Romans 9 and 4, we're going to get that in a second. So not only must you bleed an Israelite by blood, but you also have to adhere to the scripture, to the law, statutes, commandments. So again, here Christ is increasing what the requirements are. So again, those other nations, just because somebody has melanin or they have a dark hue, or that does not make you the same nation. And over and over, we get want to attach ourselves to something because we lack an identity. We're readily trying to call ourselves, we want to be Egyptian, we want to be, Kenyan, Ashanti, or heck, I even heard somebody say they was, related to Shaka Zulu or something. I don't know, that's probably because they saw a movie somewhere. Oh man, don't get me started on the Muslim. You put the dress on, put the piece on your head, and the Arabs don't even, they really don't, they will never see you as a true Muslim. They do not recognize us as true Muslim. I mean, they'll accept you as a second class position and subservient, but they'll never give you the true respect like they would another Arab. Islam is good for other Arabs, but for the Negroes, these 12 tribes, Issachar, Benjamin, Levi, Simeon, Gad, all of the 12 tribes, we have a culture. We have a language, Lashawan Quadash. Right. Check us out every Friday. Learn to speak your own tongue. Again, come down to the school. We adhere to all of the feast days, the ones prescribed by the Most High. Again, that's another thing. A particular holy day, what makes a day holy? What makes it holy is because the Most High set that day aside. He made it separate or apart from all the other days and said, this is what I want you to do on this particular day. But, that term is, thrown about so much, they make, talk about Easter, Christmas, and these things are not of the Most High. They're not found in the scriptures. And so we should partake in it. As a matter of fact, specifically, the Most High tell us not to follow the way of the evil. Don't partake in these particular holidays. So in order to actually be a brother, if you want to be the same, a brother, the same as Christ outlined, you have to follow these scriptures. You have to do the will of the Most High. But it has to be to whom pertaineth that adoption. As a matter of fact, keep saying, let me get that. Let me get that scripture. That's Romans 9 and 4. Let me just go ahead and read it instead of paraphrasing. Just going to bring that out. So when we put that precept upon precept, you're starting to see the requirements and the guidelines of specifically of who it's talking about. And then, as you start to read more and more, you will just see how narrowly defined being an Israelite is. So much to the point where you have to concede that it can only be blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians. I mean, it's just, it's just so clear. And to say otherwise, you really have to do some maneuvering and some twisting and taking out of context these scriptures to make it fit another people. And why we want to do that, again, because of the brutality that we suffered, coming across from the transatlantic slave trade, and the mental anguish that we suffer here, just wanting to be loved or to be accepted. Sometimes we just want everything to go well, but that's not always the case. Because again, the Most High, like any good father, when you don't follow the rules of the house, you have to take on those punishments and those curses. And one of those punishments are that we would go into slavery, that we would become a byword, that we would lose our name, our heritage. But on the flip side of that, we would receive blessings if we simply adhere to the law, statutes, and commandments. Then the Most High will be on our side. Our enemies will be His enemies. And then we will be above all nations across the earth. Not equal, not below, not beside, not holding hand in hand, not sitting down at some table of brotherhood. None of that. We'll be above all nations. And but the funny thing about that, not funny, but the sad thing I should say about that is that when you start talking about being above all nations, we're so beaten down. You have people that will fight you on that, telling you, hey, you be my brother. If we come back to the Most High and follow these scriptures, we'll be above all nations. And they actually feel some type of way about that. But they'll actually fight. Billy Bob down the street not gonna be saved too? Well, what about him? He didn't own any slaves. He didn't do anything. He can't be saved. And I've heard the scriptures just twisted, just trying to get salvation for everybody, because that's just how deep the wounds go as far as this captivity. Where everything around us is made to beat us down and ground us in the powder. Right. We're made to be belittled through our commercials, through TV, through print ads, through media, through the justice system, through the education system. Very early on, we're taught to, salute the flag, sing the Pledge of Allegiance, singing about liberty and freedom, while at the same time getting none of it. So mentally, that has to register. If this is the home of the free and the land of the brave, then, where was that freedom that for me and my people? Why can't I get any fruits of all this labor that my forebears put in? We toiled the soil, we bled and died in every single war America has ever had, right, and received so little of the benefits. We basically have no accumulated wealth with every generation. Debt is most likely left behind, and we're starting over and over and over again with every generation, darn it. And with the erosion of the education system, more than likely, people are going to struggle their whole entire life, having to toil in this slavery, and then that's when a lot of brothers, unfortunately, turn to unscrupulous means to survive, or because they, have a desire to have things above what they can currently afford or provide, and the quick way or the easy way becomes the only way, unfortunately. And because of that, we think that these other nations are a friend to us, or that if we just play by the rules, be kind to everybody, that somehow, that'll, put us in a better position when the very system that the oppressor put in place is the very system that's destroying your family, that's destroying you. You get the scripture for me? I don't want to get too far away from that. Go ahead, pull that.
Romans chapter 9, verse 4. Who are Israelites,
All right.
to whom pertaineth the adoption, and the glory, and the covenants.
Yeah, the covenants, both old and new. That's a plural word, covenants. That wasn't an accident. The old and the new covenant. So that's another blow to we only follow the new covenant. Because right here it would have said, you know, to whom pertains the new covenant. It doesn't say that. It says covenants, both old and new. Go ahead.
And the giving of the law.
So here you have the law, these particular law, statutes, and commandments. Go ahead.
And the service of God.
And the service of God. So you have to be an Israelite to even serve God. Go ahead.
And the promises.
And the promises. So here, the criteria is refined even more. So you have the covenants, both old and the new, the adoption, the giving of the law, the service of the Most High, Israelites. And that's according to the flesh, I believe. So, doing the will of the Father and the adoption and the covenants according to the flesh, that's who your brothers are. So with that, you become a family. And with that family moving as a cohesive unit with Christ being the head of every man and the head of Christ being the Most High, you have a force unlike any other in existence. And that is what we strive for. We strive to put this family back together. The family that was scattered to the four corners. We strive to say, hey, you know what, brother? You're an Israelite. Because I know what it was like when I first found out. You know, I was, a little skeptical. Like, well, show me. Brothers pulled out the scripture and then pulled out another scripture and pulled out another scripture, and then I was like, well, it might be something to this. Right. It might be something to this. And then when I started to see the archaeological evidence, that was pretty much a wrap for me. Right. And if you hadn't got a chance, Captain Katazar has an excellent 12-tribe lecture breakdown with the archaeology evidence. And I would implore everybody, if you have a chance, go. It's a little long. It's about 3 or 4 hours, but it's a ton of information. And I was just, not to get off track, but I was just asking him if he could shoot me a list of his, some of his books, because I noticed every single time. One of the brothers from UPK said, hey, I was reading, get one of these books, and they read from it. It's like the book is like $20, $30. And then after the information is put out there, the UPK put out this information, hey, this is in this book, price shoots up to ridiculous amounts. Because I know that Russian icon book, man, I done seen that sell for almost like $1,000, $900 to $1,000. Yes. And so a book that was no more than like, $40 or $50 initially when it was first released. Now it's like thousands. I think it's like a couple more where, the price just went through the roof. Because our history is in that. Right. Our history is in that. So these other nations have a vested interest, for you to not know who you are. Because people, at the very least, if people say, well, if you're the true Israelite, then who are these other people? I mean, that's the first and obvious question. And then you start to look and say, well, according to the scriptures, let me see who did the Most High identify as the Israelites. And true, the only blacks, Hispanics, and Native American is actually, fit these curses in these scriptures. No other nation. And so they have a real issue. They really have to, tumble backwards and do some backflips in order to try to, make themselves a part of this book. When the very people who it pertains to is just walking around oblivious. But another issue I wanted to touch on regarding brotherhood, let me get Proverbs 22 and 6. Here in Baltimore, and it goes to to brotherhood, because our system, in particular one of the systems, the school system, basically is not practicing the brotherhood that is spoke about. But then again, you couldn't expect them to, because they're not your brother. Which leads to, another shameless plug. Brother Uriah has a class for kids, for children. You contact the ICBKs, all virtual, is on Zoom. So if you want to have your children actually become exposed to education that actually highlights and promotes their own self-esteem, where they can perhaps just feel good about themselves just a little bit, then I would definitely check out their brother class. I had a chance to view one of the first courses that he put out, and it was definitely excellent, much needed class. You got that scripture? Go ahead.
Proverbs chapter 22, verse 6. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it.
That's right. So if you train up a child in the way they should go, meaning that if you put these laws, statutes, and commandments from the time they're young, by the time they get old, it'll be second nature. They won't depart from it. And I find myself, I ain't been in the truth, but just a hot second. But it's like everything that I'm about to do, immediately, you hear that little Mahaiman voice in the back of your head, that you remember from one of his classes, saying, this is how this is supposed to do. Or, this is the scripture saying you doing X, Y, and Z. That's not in here. As for me and mine, we're going to serve the Most High. Right. I mean, it's like, with everything, the most simplest of tasks is just like, it's like, well, man, the scripture say I should do X, Y, and Z. And honestly, it makes life so much easier, because everything you're supposed to do is already written down in the book. You just have to take the time to find out what it is in the proper context. And that's what this school is for, is to give that proper context and understand the blacks, Hispanics, and Native American entities, which are the true Israelites according to the scriptures. But because we're in captivity, because we think everybody is our brother, not according to how Christ outlined it, but we base it on, I don't know, being an American, maybe. We all Americans, or maybe we all bleed red, or maybe we was in the military or something. You think that means something. Or you got an education, so maybe you think that if people just got a good education, hold themselves by their bootstraps. to a good neighborhood and drive a nice car, maybe that'll somehow make this oppressor look at me differently. Or maybe I won't, befall, the same tribulations that my other brother may face. But as we can see in the news, that is not the case. And one of the ways they truly do us a disservice is through education. And I came across this again, and it's going to be a continuing problem for as long as we rely on our oppressor to teach our children. Let me get some more of that article. What is it called? What's the title on it?
Overseas schools, 41% of high school students earn below 1.0 GPA.
Exactly. So that, folks, right here in Baltimore, where they're looking at the first few months or a portion of the school year, and they're seeing that 41%, that's darn near half, have a 1.0 grade average. I mean, that's not even functionally literate. I mean, that's just like showing up saying I'm present.
Right.
I mean, so, and I'm not even getting into content or what they're actually teaching, but whatever it is they're teaching, they're not taking it in. I don't know, so definitely that's a problem. So by the time they're supposed to graduate, and we know they're just pushing them through without even really teaching them anything. So then they hit they graduate with this diploma that means absolutely nothing, unprepared into this particular system. They're saying, hey, if you want to work or you want to have a paying job that will allow you to accumulate these expensive material things, this is what you must do. But then don't prepare them for the material wealth that you shove in their face that you say everybody has to have in order to be worth something. So you're taking a people that you made worthless through the media by constantly telling them that you're nothing if you don't drive this car. You're nothing if you don't have this particular house. You're nothing if you don't have these particular type of clothes in this particular neighborhood or have this much money in your bank account. You're nothing, and then don't give them the means to actually go about getting it. Let me get some more article.
Baltimore City schools, 41% of high school students earn below a 1.0 GPA.
Oh, so pardon me, that was not 1.0, they're below 1.0. Go ahead.
Schools earned a grade point average below a D. When Giovanni Patterson ran for Baltimore City's City Council president last year, he ran on a platform that included accountability in education.
Now I'm gonna let you know, in Baltimore City, like some of the other cities across the United States, we have a majority black city government. But because this is a system not of our own making, and but more importantly, it's not of the Most High, it doesn't matter who you put in the seat, the results will still be the same. The system was not designed for you to succeed. And that's not to say that some people don't exceed in spite of it, because, history is, told us that we can, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't highlight and point out that the oppressor obviously has us in his sights and we are meant to be destroyed. Just because I don't get shot, that don't mean I should point out that you're shooting at me. But unfortunately, most of our kids are taking the brunt of these attacks through the outcome of a poor or little to no education, and then as adults, they can't function properly in the society, and then you just become a statistic or a highlight on the news that they can, make a justification for wanting to throw everybody in prison. Right. Not seeing the agenda or the forces behind that culminated to cause that situation. Is some more of that article?
They take. Yet despite the amount of money they get, we don't see much change. Our schools outspend 97% of other major school districts. Patterson said during a 2020 campaign ad, when Project Baltimore showed Patterson how Baltimore City students have been doing this year, here's how he reacted. This is terrible. Patterson told Project Baltimore, this is just further perpetuating a cycle of poverty, of despair. There's also, nearly half of students in one Baltimore high school have a 0.99 GPA or lower.
Zero. You know how poor the system has to be in order. I mean, you actually have to work to do that. I mean, that's not just by happenstance or coincidence. I mean, clearly there's a disconnect there. So you have a whole generation full of kids who are just being primed for the penal system. So they go from one system, the school system, to the penal system. If they don't have basic, labor jobs that you want to, break your back for the next 20 years just so you can have a place to live and food to eat and put clothes in. Most High be with you if you got kids. If you got children, it's almost impossible to support a family with with this type of educational system. But again, when you depend on another nation to educate your children, you cannot be surprised at the outcome. You can't be. And this isn't new. This has been going on for quite some time. It's more than that.
Project Baltimore attained a chart assembled by Baltimore City Schools. The chart shows the average GPA for every high school grade in the city, freshman through senior. In the first 3 quarters of this past school year, according to the chart, 41% of all Baltimore City high school students earned below a 1.0 grade point average. In other words, nearly half of the 20,500 public high school students in Baltimore earned less than a D average.
So, when you training up your children, as the scriptures should say, and you allow the oppressor to do all the training, which way that they'll never depart from? Because right now, not only are they not educating your children, but they are pushing a serious LGBT curriculum in the school. So they don't want you to learn, be proficient in math or reading comprehension or how to start a business, but they certainly want you to be proficient in what pronouns to use or how to be accepting of somebody who, is confused about, what their gender is. They want to make sure you get that message, but the message that would uplift or teach Israel how to be a brother or how to survive in this captivity, no, they're not gonna readily hand that to you. And that's not saying that you should stop sending your kids to school, but you need an education outside of that. And that's what I love about the UPK here. I see so many brothers who probably wouldn't, know where the bookstore was or, didn't have a library before the UPK, or just some books just sitting there being used. But brothers are in the books constantly, studying, becoming more knowledgeable. And then that knowledge, and I'll use myself as an example. I love reading, but where I got it from was actually watching my mother read. And then seeing her do it consistently, you kind of mimic, what you see the adults do. And that was one of the things that I picked up was, reading. What is she reading? Then I want to read. And I just started going through all the books. So that sort of, the unspoken message was reading is valuable. It's something that you cherish. And so when you combine that with what to read and how to put it in context, then that's a powerful combination that you can then pass on to your own kids to train them up. So when they go to school, they can already know the agenda of the oppressor. They can start to navigate those waters. No, I'm not pledging allegiance to this flag. Only allegiance I have is to the Most High. They know that. Right? That's the only covenant I have is with the Most High. And then that one nation under God, then that takes on a whole different meaning when you start looking through these scriptures. And then, saying, America is saying X, Y, and Z, one nation under God, but everything I see you do is telling me the opposite. And then you understand actually what the Most High said. Even as a child, you train them up, they'll start to be able to discern that. And so no, I'm not singing My Country 'Tis of Thee. Do they still sing that in school? Probably not. But I know, but that was one of the things, they had us doing way back when I was, first, second grade or whatever. They used to make us sing those crappy songs. Basically just telling you how wonderful, white people are, or the oppressive are. It's a lot. Further indoctrinating. So indoctrinating you at a young age. So, basically you see everything through the lens of the oppressor. So by the time you get older, not only do you hate your brother, but you begin to hate yourself. And that's part of the indoctrination. And that's how you wind up with a industry for hair weave for billions of dollars. Why? Because you have a negative stereotype about yourself as you are. And so that's where that comes from. And then it's perpetuated by the men, by the women, because that's what the men like to see. They want a certain look that's perpetuated by the oppressor. And then that's further exacerbated by the women then trying to pursue or take on that persona that you can never actually truly reach, and then it's like a self-perpetuating cycle where you have little girls becoming younger and younger, wanting to basically scar themselves to try to achieve a particular perversion of beauty, through the lens of the oppressor that they'll never be able to meet. And it's killing us. So much to the point where I see now, you have people with millions of dollars trying to bleach their skin. You think they would be happy or have some level of, they would achieve some level of success. You would think that they would, be okay or comfortable in their own skin. But even then, you can see that these curses and this oppression, even if it's not a money issue. It's not a thing about wealth or money. They're not safe or protected from the mentality or I would say the mental beating that the oppressor gives us on a daily basis. Because this media and propaganda, you're constantly being bombarded by it. Every time you turn on the TV, every time you see one of those ads coming across your cell phone, whether it's advertisement out on the street, whether it's the music that you hear. Yeah, I mean, it's they promote themselves very well. So, but by promoting themselves, they have to belittle you at the same time, because we're like polar opposites, pretty much. And you can see that most recently with this critical race theory issue came out, where the sister trying to get the critical race theory taught in schools, where you're pretty much learning about your own history and your own people, maybe to give that little kid just a little bit of self-esteem, so maybe they will perform better because I think better about myself. Then maybe you wouldn't have to depend upon the oppressor for your education, because man, I'm smart enough where I can yeah, I'm gonna go to school too, but I'm not gonna solely depend on you to tell me who I am. I'm not gonna let you define me, and that's what's happened. We've been defined by people who hate us, and that outcome of that will never be. So here in BPK, we look in these scriptures, and it clearly says who we are. Children of the Most High, sons of the power. That's a powerful statement in itself, just the name alone. So, again, they have a vested interest in you not knowing who you are, because just in that small nugget of knowledge can move mountains, so to speak. and as Christ said. But let me get Job 9:24. But in this system where you allow the oppressor to dictate your identity, to teach that to your children, it's basically a prescription for their destruction. Not immediately, it happens later. It's the long game, so to speak. They not, it's not right now. It's later. So you have to say, for instance, look at abortion. And I know people bring that up a lot, but you got to look at when Margaret Sanger, that's the eugenicist actually, she actually came up with Planned. Didn't even change the name. It still was the same name she came up with. Planned Parenthood is still the same name that it takes for the day. She didn't believe that blacks or Hispanics, what they call undesirables, that's what they call it. So they basically wanted to kill you in the womb, and they put it under the name of Planned Parenthood. But they just planned for you not to be a parent at all. Pretty much population control. But go ahead.
They also used the black preacher to perpetuate it too.
I was just about to get to that.
Oh, wow.
No, you good. Yeah, I actually, I should, I should have bought that here. I actually have a copy of that letter. Yeah, I have the letter that she actually wrote.
Yeah.
Margaret Sanger, the progenitor of the Planned Parenthood movement, but she wrote a letter saying that black people wouldn't accept it if the message came from them. So they would put it out through the preachers. So here they got your reverend, your minister, Reverend Porkchop. They got him telling you that it's okay for you to murder your unborn child. But of course, at that particular time, you gotta remember at the time, black families were kind of still intact, for the most part. Not nowhere near to the extent the families are broken up now.
Right.
But they aren't planning for right now immediately. They know it'll take hold. It'll take a while, but eventually they know in the future that this could be one more tool that they can use against you. So then they put it in place, and you fast forward to today, and now you have a Planned Parenthood everywhere black people live. Black, Hispanic, everywhere where we are in mass, there is a Planned Parenthood, and if the population is a little bit too big, you might get 2 or 3. So, a major city, good night. You probably got one every other block. Who knows? But they are definitely going to make it very accessible for you to murder yourself. Go ahead.
Women movements like the Me Too movement are also connected with the Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood is connected with the Me Too movement. I had to do that part yesterday.
Exactly. No smile, look out for that.
So Planned Parenthood is connected with the Me Too movement. And if you look at the Me Too movement is also connected with the LGBT community.
Yeah.
So it's all linked.
Of course.
Understand? And they are also against the patriarch of the man. They are against the male. So
Well, if you look at the unspoken outcome of each one of those movements, be it Planned Parenthood, be it Me Too, which is pretty much anti-male, and LGBTQ, because 2 women and 2 men cannot reproduce. So if that's what you're promoting population control, basically. I mean, that's at the end, that's what it comes down to. And with us being at the small end of the population scale, I mean, that's why we've been 10% of the population since forever. I mean, it's, as many people as you know that have children at the frequency that we have it. Did you ever stop to wonder how is it that we maintain a steady 10% of the population? I mean, again, it's not just one thing, it's a system of things. So when you add on the poor education to the, that's if you make it past Planned Parenthood, the mother didn't decide that, hey, I couldn't afford it or present too much of a hardship. If your mother did actually decide to have it, because the father basically has, no power or no decision made, no authority in this matter. They need to put it solely on the woman. If she decides whether you're going to live or not, only to have you go to a poor educational system that doesn't give you any tools in order for you to be self-sufficient, let alone provide for a family in an honest, legal manner. They're not preparing you to do that. And then they have another system for you, the penal system, so they can work you to death. And then when you are old, that's if you make it. If you're not, murdered during any of this time, if you actually are able to survive all of that, then maybe at the ripe old age, 80, 85, they might say that you don't pose a threat to society and let you go rather than pay for your medical bills. But believe me, it don't have nothing to do with them whether they believe you're a threat to society or not. It's because you're getting older, you're going to rack up some serious medical bills, and the state is not going to be responsible or lose a whole, put a bunch of their money into keeping you alive. Right? So we're going to let you out and you take care of yourself. And then in a couple of years when we drop dead because you can't really afford the proper medical care after it works you to death. And then that system just pretty much repeats itself. But not everybody even makes it to the end of that system. You might get abortion, miseducated to be murdered on the streets, the drugs. Exactly.
That's the 4 major.
Exactly.
Major parts right there.
But what, again, I don't want to leave this out. A lot of people, before they get to the penal system, after the miseducation, or the uneducation, I should say, if you happen to murder a couple other people on your way, before you get there, that's, they look at that as icing on the cake. Be it through drugs, the drugs that you distributed, or the black man that you actually, put a gun to and actually outright murdered. if you happen to take out a few with you on your way to the penal system, then that's just, you know, hey, that's just icing on the cake. That's just all gravy for them. And again, we just keep perpetuating the system. So at one point, you know, at some point, the numbers won't keep up. Or at least that's what the thinking is. It gotta be. And at some point, you'll see a sharp population decline. Or at least that's what they're hoping for. So they can pretty much do away with the 12 tribes. This basically, they want you to be in no more in remembrance, as the scripture said, at all. So that's why they fight so hard. That's why they don't like the UPK. I mean, you know, the UPK, we follow all the laws. You know, be it the laws of this particular captivity and the Lord's laws. We are law-abiding citizens. We don't promote law breaking. So you would think that they wouldn't have a problem, you know, with our message. But if you look at that, the effect, if you look at the young warriors being, you know, brought up, trained up, so to speak, in the ways of these scriptures, that will be a posing, growing threat. No doubt about it, because here you have these law-abiding citizens armed with the morality of the scriptures and truly living them out. Then the oppressor will have no choice but to fall. Because we will be an entity to ourselves under the Most High. And you got the scripture for it in a second. But this particular captivity, we don't control it. And even so, this particular system, and one of that first system, that school system, so to speak, well, indoctrination definitely begins before you actually get to school, but they really reinforce it by the time you send your kids there. So you have to have a way to counteract that, to override that. You just can't leave the kids a victim to be miseducated by the oppressor. But let me get that scripture.
Job chapter 9, verse 24. The earth is given into the hands of the wicked.
Go ahead.
He covereth the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he?
And exactly, the earth is given into the hands of the wicked. And we know this oppressor pretty much controls the earth, the whole entire earth. No doubt about it. If you look at, I see Asian people wearing business suits now. They don't even wear their traditional dress anymore when it comes time for, you know, businesses or meetings. They're wearing the clothes of the oppressor. And that's whether you're in Europe or Australia, Asia, no matter where you go, the particular dress or attire to do that of business is the suit. Like that. And that's what the oppressor sets that agenda. Western culture pretty much dominates the earth. Everywhere else is pretty much considered third world. And that's why you have a lot of people dying to get here to live a lifestyle promoted by the oppressor, pretty much. Because he sets the agenda. The earth is, you know, is in his control. And that's whether it's England or the English territories, the U.S. or the U.S. territories, or other colonies that they originally had control of and now are run by their progeny or their children, like Australia, so to speak. Originally, that was they killed all the natives pretty much there. I mean, I think there might be a handful of them left. I mean, literally a handful, but for the most part, when England emptied out their penal colonies and sent everybody to Australia, that's pretty much, who the quote unquote Australian is now, just like the American. Of course, we know that there were already people here long before the oppressor came here, but he takes on that identity and calls himself an American. And before long, there'll be African next. And if you don't believe me, I'll just throw a name out there off the top of my head. Candace Swanepoel. I don't know, it's a weird name. Or what's her name? Reeve Camp, if you remember her. Remember, that's the woman that the Blade Runner dude killed. Right. They were quote unquote South African oppressors. And then and it gets even stranger because they'll come here and call themselves African American. I've seen that. I've seen the lawsuits where you have oppressors whose families, migrated to South Africa, years ago, and then come to America and get citizenship, go to school, and check off African American so they can get the benefits. And they're allowed to do it in some cases. So again, they really had this system set up for their success and our downfall. And you can see it even recently where there was a scandal with the SAT. We busting our tails, thinking if we study real hard, we'll achieve some sort of success. And all this time, they cheat. Cheat. And that just goes to show you it's not really all about, of course, knowledge is always, a good thing to have. But in their world, they're allowed to circumvent that just based on who they know. Then they'll have the piece of paper saying, I went to this, top level school, but, had somebody else doing the work. And then able to get a particular type of employment that any of us could do, but they have a requirement, you have to have a particular degree, to keep you out of that particular field. And that's arisen with the unions before, believe it or not. That's what unions were actually developed to keep black people out of a particular field of study, or a particular trade, I should say, particular trades. That's the purpose of that the reason why it came up with the union. It's a union job. We would hire you, but it's a union job. Go ahead.
That was in 1866 when they started the first major labor union. They had something put in 1866 when they first started, and then when they started, all the labor unions were all white labor unions. They were white, so that was the excommunicate black artisans, blacks who were skilled in a lot of those like plumbing and building and architecture and all of that, and froze them out. So that was one of the most major reasons of why those labor unions started. And that's another reason why that's also connected with college certification or
Exactly.
things like that. All of that is connected to keeping us out, because coming out of college, you had to have a college degree. They knew coming out of slavery, we didn't have the money to go to college, so we wasn't going to make it that far. You understand?
Exactly.
That's what that was.
So they froze us out with these made up conjured requirements, and with the monetary impediment as well. Just, it's just another roadblock that they, try to throw in our way. And that's why, again, we need to have a nation of our own. And again, that recipe for that nation is found in these scriptures. I mean, every answer that you could possibly want is found in this book. Stop. Lot. When you get a chance, let me get you got it. No sweat. Chance to get Romans 6 and 16. So again, where I left off, I was talking about again, this whole system of things is just a mechanism designed to destroy us. And again, so we need a nation of our own. And the building blocks, or how do you put this thing together? How do you form a nation? How do you run a nation? How do you determine what righteousness is found in these scriptures according to the Most High. I mean, it's pretty much all laid out. The only thing we have to do is actually follow it, But that requires us to train up not just yourself, but your children as well. Because it says that Christ said, you must become as one. So that's what happens when you become so quote unquote born again. Not that you come into your mother's womb a second time, but you have to forget everything that you knew and relearn everything according to these scriptures. So when you come to the school, I enjoy being called a young man all over again. Even though that time it passed me a long time ago, but I certainly did enjoy it while it lasted, so to speak. But again, you can't depend on your oppressor to give you what's going to the knowledge that's going to free you. And so that's why they come against us so hard. Even though we're small in number, that's fine, because the numbers probably were never going to be large anyway. But if you have enough Israelites together following the Most High, again, it's a force that, you know, we're basically building the kingdom. And our rise is their fall. And it's right here in the scriptures. Because it also said, he that leadeth into captivity must go into captivity. And so, again, what type of just God would put a heaven where the slave and the slave master were both on equal terms? That's like putting a rapist with the rape victim in the same room. And nobody would think to do that. No one would tell a rape victim, hey, you know what? That happened a long time ago. Can't you just get over that? Or, can't we just get along? You don't even need any sort of reparation or justice or anything. You just supposed to let bygones be bygones. Nobody would say that. Nobody would go tell the Jewish man to forget the Holocaust. But for some odd reason, the murder of over 99 million people during the transatlantic slave trade, and that's a light estimate if you ask me. And that's not counting the people who just, thrown overboard or, massacred once you got there, or people that died of disease. Because again, if you ever seen, we have one of these shirts that says True Holocaust, if you've ever seen it. And basically, they got the pictures from a diagram of a design of an old slave ship. And you can see how they just packed the slaves on the ship in spoon-like fashion, where you're literally sitting in between the legs of a person in front of you, where you're packed literally like sardines. And you had to urinate, defecate, or whatever bodily function, you had to do. You sat in that for the whole trip. They weren't giving any bathroom breaks out. Because again, you're just considered cargo. And that's what we had to endure. So for some odd reason, you go now, and these are your fathers and mothers. And to tell you to just forget that is an insult. And so, people wonder why people, become angry, or why we, may speak with such passion. Is because when you understand what was taken from you, what was lost, how could you not be angry? That's the reason why they don't want that critical race theory taught in the school. Because then you would, for the first time, this oppressor would have to be honest about the atrocities committed. And so if it's good for the Jewish man to constantly highlight and never forget, if it's good for the oppressor to say, remember 9/11, we'll never forget, then obviously, we should be afforded the same opportunity. But of course, us being the true children of the Most High, if we were to fully as a people wake up to our true calling or our power, once we wake up to that and start to actually follow Christ and live it out, this place will fall. This place will fall overnight, because for one, we wouldn't be reliant on their educational system. We would go to school already knowing who we are, and in that case, knowing that we can't depend on them to educate our kids, to educate ourselves. We pretty much would go there and probably teach you something, because again, some of the first computers were black women. If it wasn't for those black women, there would be no NASA space shuttle going into space. Literal computers, their mathematical computations was unrivaled. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it fits, absolutely. It fits, right. Go on. But that was the actual job description way back when, all the computers, the actual person who did mathematical, equations and solve problems. That it would actually come little computers. You would compute, and that's what they did. So I have no doubt that as far as mathematics, reading comprehension, writing, arithmetic, we've already conquered sports. That's just a given. But that same effort and energy reapplied to other areas once you have a knowledge of yourself and you have that confidence to know that no subject is beyond me, no subject is hard or too difficult, then nobody can hold a candle to me. It would be just like, Jordan on the court. It's the same thing. But except you'd be, Jordan of physics. You'd be Jordan of mathematics. Or most importantly, in these scriptures, so to speak. And that's what they're afraid of. Because of people with a morality, you can't get me to sell drugs to my brother. You can't get me to murder my brother. So I'm not offending him. Or if I have an issue, I'm not calling the police. I'm going to go to my brother and my brother alone. I mean, just those few basic things of brotherhood show us that we don't need the suppressor to resolve any of our issues, be it education, child rearing, or just conflict resolution, any of it. But it starts with the ISUPK, because again, we say the home of the truth. This truly is the home of the truth. And I know a lot of people have a hard time accepting that, but remember, there's only one body. And, again, before I came in, I, wasn't really familiar with who was who or what was what. But as I began to, navigate and to see some of the differences, I noticed that everything that this one particular group said lined up with the scriptures. There was no ambiguity. There was no, everything actually precept upon precept. Literally everything lined up. Nothing was out of place. And that's what I knew when they said that we're the home of the truth. And then you actually see them living it. It was quite clear of where I was supposed to be. Quite clear. So when we say home of the truth, that's not I guess it is kind of, a wild boast, but it's the truth. It's the truth. And no other place can quite compare. It don't even start with a Christian church. I mean, you got, homosexuals parading up and down the aisle now. So, and I know people say, well, not every church, not my church. Not my church, but yes, your church too. Yes, your church too. Because it's one thing to try to clean a person up according to the scriptures. Because, we all come in, filthy, not obeying the word of the Most High. But once you hear these things and begin to clean up and apply them to your life, then you're supposed to see a change. You're not supposed to be promoted to choir director. So you can prance around and sashay up on the pulpit. And I mean, it's just so far removed, it's almost laughable. And don't get me started come Christmas time. They're not only practicing it, they're promoting it. And that's not scripturally based at all. And everybody go to church on Easter. If you don't go in no time of the year, people will put on the newest outfit they can kids get their new outfits, and everybody go there, at least on Easter. And that's not biblical. So clearly, that's not the one body. If there's only one body, that's not it. Not promoting Easter and Christmas. So again, when you put these little outfits on your kids, talking about Easter bunnies, and you drag them to church, with the feminine choir director, what are you training your kids up to be, or training them up to do? What is it the way that you don't want them to depart from? Because, but again, after you leave the church, then it gets reinforced again when they go back to school. You got the Christmas program, you got them telling them, well, little Johnny over here is now going to be Krista or something, whatever, yeah, you're supposed to join in the delusion and call this man, referring to him as a woman. And, they actually have not just the students, but they now have teachers who are responsible for educating your children, presenting themselves as the opposite sex. And you're supposed to go along with it. Now, more importantly, you're supposed to allow your children to be indoctrinated with this. So again, what are you training your children up to be? What is it the way that you don't want them to depart from? Because hopefully, it's not the ways of this oppressor, the ways of this heathen. Because it's getting more and more wicked as the years go on. So again, if you want to inoculate yourself and your children, you go to ISUBK.com and you contact closest camp leader in your city. That's the real vaccine right there for all this madness, for this death, because we're surrounded by all this ungodliness, so to speak. And this is the only safe haven that we have. It's found in these scriptures, but you have to put the scriptures in proper context. You have to know what they mean, and then you have to apply them. And this is the only place that you can truly do that. Got that in that scripture?
Romans chapter 6, verse 16. Know ye not that to whom ye yield yourselves servants to obey, his servant ye are to whom ye obey, whether of sin unto death or of obedience unto righteousness.
That's right. So know ye not, don't you know, or do you have the knowledge that whom ye yield yourself servants to obey, meaning that the things that you practice, the things that you do, the things you put into action, that's who you're servants to. So when you dress up your kids and talk about we going to the Easter egg hunt or whatever it may be, or you going to the Christmas service, at church, that's who you're serving. You're serving those idols that those particular acts prescribe to, because you're practicing it, you're putting it into motion, which is in direct contradiction to what the scripture says. But you wouldn't know that listening to your pastor, because to them it's not about your salvation. It's not about your salvation. It's more or less for monetary gain and notoriety, or so they can buy an next plane or jet. Who knows? Maybe just want to buy another pair of gators or drive a nice car or something. No clue. But I do know it's not according to these scriptures. In direct opposition, I think there's no way around it. And one of the biggest demons is that Christmas demon. Woo. You find that earlier we talked about the Muslims. I still don't understand if you're a Muslim, why you celebrate Christmas? For the life of me, I never got that, but this is going to show you how strong the influence of this oppressor is. When you got people around the world of other faiths and other religions celebrating Christmas. It's about the kids. You're destroying your kids, trying to drain yourself and kill yourself financially to afford things, or put yourself in so much debt that you don't come out until the next Christmas. So then, people robbing and stealing just to accumulate things for children who pretty much are being left for dead, so to speak. If you're not outright killing them, you're setting them up to die. And I mean, I don't know of no other way to put that. Because if you're teaching them no morality, you're lying to them from the beginning, talking about men coming down the chimney to give you gifts, bunnies lay eggs, and men can become women, then what type of thought processes are they going to have when they become an adult? When everything is turned upside down and everything is backwards. And then you try to give them a God who looks nothing like them. You'll give them Caesar Borgia, or what you know, or what they try to depict as Christ. A little, a pale-faced guy in a Roman toga looking totally homosexual. When the scriptures it doesn't describe Christ anything like that. That man had a hard face. Had the voice of the rolling thunder. His voice was loud, boisterous. Dark-skinned man. Had feet as though it was likened unto brass, as though it burned in the furnace. Had hair like lamb's wool, white and woolly. So again, everything is upside down, and that's what you teach your kids, or even if it's unspoken, you practice it enough, then that's what you're teaching, and that's whose servants that you become, because that's what you're practicing, and it's sin unto death. But you can practice obedience unto righteousness. That's the other side. But that means be obedient unto who? You have to be obedient unto these law, statutes, commandments, and that's what it truly means to love the Most High. And Christ gives you the perfect example of that. The perfect example. The perfect example. But again, you have to be taught. Again, you have to become, as one of those little children, forgetting everything that you thought you knew and starting from the beginning. And, the scriptures say, to whom shall it teach knowledge? To them that are weaned from the, drawn from the breast, weaned from milk and drawn from the breast, paraphrase, of course. But basically, it's to summarize or paraphrase, is saying that you have to go back to that state where you didn't know to relearn. You can't come in with preconceptions or notions. The only thing to do is hinder your understanding of what the scriptures are really trying to say. Even the things that are right there plainly in front of you. Because for the life of me, that scripture, and it's like people read it and they just don't see it. And it baffles me. It's the scripture where it says that Christ was made of the seed of David. I believe it's let me back up and pull it up. I think it's Romans 1 and we'll read out. Yeah. Can you pull that from? I'm just gonna read it because I'm trying to mess it up. Keep people will look at this, but the programming is so strong, the indoctrination is so far gone, they can read it and they get, they get something totally, they see something totally different. You got it? Go ahead.
Romans chapter 1, verse 3, concerning his son, Jesus Christ, our Lord, which was made of the seed of David, according to the flesh.
According to the flesh. I mean, that's quite plain. I mean, not to be vulgar, but we know what seed it is. That's, the particular matter that a man expels during sex, they, create children. According to the flesh, not of the spirit. That means God didn't come down and, get somebody pregnant. It's not some triune or some, dog head or whatever they, say it is. I mean, quite literally, made of the seed of David according to the flesh. But if you don't become as one of those little children and forget all the indoctrination that you'll look at that and it just won't register. And I mean, if I didn't see it, hear it with my own eyes and see it, I wouldn't believe it. Because to me, that's quite plain. But you have some, because they've been trained up to believe in, that, Christ is God, when he clearly said, not me, but the Father. None is good, but, why thou calls me good?
Right.
Only one is good, that's the Father, making a clear distinction, saying that I'm not God. But again, because they've been trained up in a whole different manner, according to the oppressor's doctrine. Again, another way we're miseducated, not just in reading, writing, and math, but one of the first and main ways we're miseducated is who the Most High is. We're told that he's this, blonde-haired, white guy. That's one of the first lies we're indoctrinated with as children. And therefore, in turn, as a child, if you learn that Christ, this is the image that we have of Christ that they depict, Caesar Borgia, then in turn, God must be white because that's his son. And then you're teaching that God made this woman pregnant, had a son, this is what he looks like. So obviously, all the oppressors who take on that image must be God as well. And subconsciously, when we move about in this society, you see that playing out. And that's why we can't get away from people just can't imagine a world without the oppressor. They feel lost. You start talking about, hey, going into slavery. Those who, put people in slavery must go into slavery. That's what the scriptures say, but the program, man, you train them up, train the child in where they go, they'll never depart from it. And we've been trained up to absolutely love this oppressor. And when we become adults, we pass it on to their children. So then you got a whole nation full of people that does not want to hold this oppressor accountable for the atrocities and crimes that they not only have committed, but continue to commit. Even that. So George Floyd is gone now. Murdered right in front of our eyes. And you already have people wanting to forget. Already. Not all the police. Not all the police. I mean, it's such a contrast in comparison to, the Asians. They got that crime bill passed lickety split. And I don't even think anybody was murdered. To my knowledge, the Asian wasn't murdered, was he? I think some couple people might have scraped the knee or something. That's about it. But somehow they got the anti-hate bill. Right. I mean, we had one that they still won't even acknowledge Tulsa, Oklahoma being burned down. You got a woman 106, 107 years old saying, I don't wanna die. Please don't let me die before you come out and acknowledge that what you did was wrong. So we over 100. So and the only thing they clapped. I mean, they gave her some applause, but they didn't give her any redress. They didn't give her any justice. They didn't even acknowledge, what took place. They just clapped because she's older now and she came and spoke her piece. But did they give her anything of substance? No. No. But the wicked rule the earth. And that's just as plain as that. And if not, then who? If this oppressor isn't the wicked in control of the earth, then you have to point it out to me who. Again, scriptures make it quite plain. I'll probably get some more on that next week, and a few other articles I wanted to bring out as far as how we're being miseducated, and it basically causes us to lack brotherhood amongst ourselves that would make us a great nation. But we can only be a great nation if we're under the Most High in unison, following these laws, statutes, and commandments. And that ultimately, that's what's going to bring about the kingdom. And with that, pass the class over to priest and officer.
Security announcements. We are the ISUPK out of 1 West 125th Street, Harlem, New York, under Commanding General Your Honor. New rules for brothers and sisters. When a new brother or sister comes into the school, they are off limits for 6 months. They are to be saluted only. They are here to shed themselves in the world. After 6 months, if a brother or sister has an interest in a particular person, he or she must get permission from their head to speak to a brother or sister. After this 6 months, there's another 6 months in which the brother or sister will court each other. After this 6-month period, the brother or sister will get permission from the head to marry. Tithes, which is a commandment. You can find this in Numbers 18:21, Malachi 3:8-10, pronounced as Ma'ashera. It means Hebrew, it's pronounced. It means 10th in the Hebrew, and it's pronounced Ma'ashera. The 10th of every penny of any increase the Lord gives you, give to the Treasury Department or teacher. Pre-fund, a free will offering, not mandatory whatsoever amount you would like to give. Up and coming holy convocation. Remind Akim and Aquatim to check on social media such as ISUPK.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and so on for ISUPK events and material. If a brother wants to be a trooper in the school, he is to start wearing all black, which means what? It includes black boots, shirts, pants, headbands, or scarves. With that, we're going to give one courtesy salute to the teacher and of Israel, Imagine Shabbat, Imagine Barak, Yahabah Hashem Yahweh Shabbarakatah, Yahweh class dismissed. Forget these.
tell? No calling can cause pain. Something that a rebel knows very well. Can't you tell I was sent from the Lord? Got a tongue like a two-edged sword. With his
Nobody tell you crap. You know why? Because I never saw you before. But you're a black man like me.
My whole life was trying to find something to follow. Had loyalty, every man tried to borrow. Felt pain and a lot of sorrow. Got betrayed, so packed I didn't even have my heart broke. Living confused, about to lose hope. Cops got me on the side of the road like a sideshow. Need an antidote before I croak. Now I'm setting fire to rhythm man blues for this guitar smoke. Wrestling with no cause, trying to find direction. The world got me vexed. Picked up a bad liquor habit that's hereditary from oppression. Felt like my life was on fire, trying to find an exit. Now look, 10 G's plus a good break. Sometimes a follower is a soldier, trying to find a good shepherd. Just when you in hell, how do you excel? Wisdom the breath of life, I don't believe in fairy tale. Listen well to what I tell. No calling can cause pain. Something that a rebel knows very well. Can't you tell I was sent from the Lord? Got a tongue like a two-edged sword. With his
Nobody tell you crap. You know why? Because I never saw you before. But you're a black man like me.
My whole life was trying to find something to follow. Had loyalty, every man tried to borrow. Felt pain and a lot of sorrow. Got betrayed, so packed I didn't even have my heart broke. Living confused, about to lose hope. Cops got me on the side of the road like a sideshow. Need an antidote before I croak. Now I'm setting fire to rhythm man blues for this guitar smoke. Rebel with no cause, trying to find direction. The world got me vexed. Picked up a bad liquor habit that's hereditary from oppression. Felt like my life was on fire, trying to find an exit. Now look, 10 G's plus a good break. Sometimes a follower is a soldier, trying to find a good shepherd. Plus when you in hell, how do you excel? Wisdom the breath of life, I don't believe in fairy tale. Listen well to what I tell. No calling can cause pain. Something that a rebel knows very well. Can't you tell I was sent from the Lord? Got a tongue like a two-edged sword. With his
Nobody tell you crap. You know why? Because I never saw you before. But you're a black man like me.
My whole life was trying to find something to follow. Had loyalty, every man tried to borrow. Felt pain and a lot of sorrow. Got betrayed, so packed I didn't even have my heart broke. Living confused, about to lose hope. Cops got me on the side of the road like a sideshow. Need an antidote before I croak. Now I'm setting fire to rhythm man blues for this guitar smoke. Rebel with no cause, trying to find direction. The world got me vexed. Picked up a bad liquor habit that's hereditary from oppression. Felt like my life was on fire, trying to find an exit. Now look, 10 G's plus a good break. Sometimes a follower is a soldier, trying to find a good shepherd. Plus when you in hell, how do you excel? Wisdom the breath of life, I don't believe in fairy tale. Listen well to what I tell. No calling can cause pain. Something that a rebel knows very well. Can't you tell I was sent from the Lord? Got a tongue like a two-edged sword. With his
Nobody